My name is David Hippis. I'm going to be talking about some Plone tips for new developers, integrators, and themers. This will be the overview of my talk. We're going to have a little quick background of me. Then we're going to talk about overcoming the Plone learning curve. Object hierarchy and context are the two big areas I think people overlook when they're first starting, and I'll go into some more detail on those. Then I'm going to show some tiny MCE style trigger tricks that I've used. Then some templating and templating tool tips and some other miscellaneous tips that could help you out. A little background, I graduated from UW Oshkosh with a computer science degree. I work at Polk Library as the library web developer. I've been doing Plone stuff for about 3 years now. I've done a lot of custom products for the Polk Library site, mainly interfacing and integrating with different library systems such as our catalog, research databases, pulling everything into that central source so our students really can find what they're looking for. Yeah, prior to this, I was a Java and PHP person. I know, boo. So overcoming the Plone learning curve. This is how I felt when I first started, and I am sure a lot of people felt this way. It's just a lot of stuff to learn. And I hope that when I would go through this process of how I overcame this learning curve, I hope it'll help you kind of do the same. This is probably the biggest question you ask yourself when you're first starting to learn Plone, is where do I even begin? There's just so many different areas, the ZMI, the Plone site, where do I start? So we're going to break this down. I have kind of set up a little ladder here of where you should start and where you should probably end up, and you got to find out where your project needs to kind of fit in there. You really can't work your way up this ladder without knowing the stuff beforehand. So if you need to work in the Plone framework, you really better know Python, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and even what Plone can do through the web before we even bother even trying to get into that stuff. So let's try to figure out where your project actually needs to start. Now, through the web content, all Plone through web content capabilities, this is quite amazing actually. You can do web pages, files, images, collections, links, folders, news items, events, permission, groups, workflows, searching, organizing content, editing, and this is just a fraction of the stuff you can do through the web with Plone. Now, even with the new versions of Plone, we have theming through the web as well as custom content type creation with dexterity. So it's only getting bigger and bigger and more powerful. This is just a great thing to do. And when you're looking at your project, you first have to ask yourself, can my project just fit within these requirements? Do I even have to get into the HTML? Do I have to even get into the JavaScript? If you don't, then you've met your requirements here for your project, and you can get them done without even having to get into the details. Some places to help you with starting to learn this is the User's Guide to Plone 4 book right here. This will kind of tell you the basics of Plone, how to use Plone. We do have some extras of these upstairs, so if you want to get a copy, you can come to me after this presentation and I can get you one for free. So this can greatly help you out. I see someone up there ready waiting for one. Oh, another one, excellent. Another great source to look for to learn all these capabilities is just some of the content creation standard tutorials, which you can get on plone.org. I actually have a folder here that I'll hand out later, which has lots of links and different references to all different sources that you can use for all your development, learning how to use Plone. And the other place you want to learn to just see what can be done out of the box with Plone is just in the Plone site setup. These are 3 areas that you should look at first to see if you can complete your project that you have to work on. If you can't really do what you need to do with what is built in Plone, the next rung of the ladder that you should actually look at is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is where you're going to want to do some site theming, your layouts, template adjustments, global style changes. And these are the 3 areas that you're really going to have to work in. The ASO is new of Plone 4.1. So if you have that capability, I would recommend starting there and learning there if you have to do some of these changes. Deco, which is coming soon, which will help you with more of your layouts. And if you're running an older version of Plone, you're going to have to go into what I consider the ZMI, which is I consider very nasty. It's not a nice, friendly place to be in. But if you have to go in there, the 4 areas that you are going to have to look into are the portal CSS, the portal JavaScripts, the portal skins, and the portal view customizations. So that's where you want to look at if that's where your project needs some custom theming. That's And I have some, again, documentation in here which will give you more ideas of how to start in those areas. So if your project still can't, it's still not meeting your requirements and you can't get something moved around or something slightly customized with just through the web or just with, JavaScript or CSS moving something over here, then you're going to have to move up into the framework, really. And even before the framework, you're going to have to learn Python. That's just something you're going to have to know. So what I recommend for when you try to learn Python is go to python.org and look through their tutorials on how to start. They'll give you some great examples. Otherwise, purchase some Python books because that is another great resource. So once you have an idea of how to work in Python, then you can actually get into the framework. Now, what I consider working in the Plone framework is, how I summarize this is, you're adding new functionality to Plone or adding something that did not exist before. And if you do not have to do that, then don't. Like, if you can cover your use cases below this ladder, you should do it, because it'll make things easier for you to work in, especially if you're new to Plone and you're new to developing and integrating and theming. If you end up having to make something new for the Plone framework, the areas that you are going to want to look into are the Paster and Zope Skell, which are going to set up your products for you, kind of build your skeleton products so you can put all your content and your development work into it. Some Plone developer books. I like grab the name so I can't remember off the top of my head. The Professional Plone 4 Development book by Martin Aspelli. That's the one I really rely on a lot for finding out information. I also look into Plone docs, and I also use the Plone support, like the IRC chat. If you have a question, you can ping someone there, and they're so friendly, they'll give you some answers right back. So generally, if you can do, this is where you should probably be able to do all your stuff. And if you have to, and I try to avoid it, if you have to, you can go into the, Zope framework, and I advise just, whatever it all costs not to do this. You're gonna have to do this with like ZCML, some configurations when you're working with like the ZODB. This is Zope 2, 5, and Zope 3. My recommendation is always check if like the Plone framework has a hook or something that does it easier into this system. I would recommend doing it that way. So my first project, and when I had to overcome the Plone learning curve, was in 2010. I needed to get to this level on that ladder. I needed to have the capability to add content through the web. I needed to have completely customized UI, which involves, really crazy jQuery stuff. I needed to have the Plone framework because I needed new archetypes, which means I had to learn Python. And I did not know Python before this, so this is a completely new experience for me. Yes. So when did this all come together in this project for me? I'll be honest, it took me about 5 months. That is from learning Python from scratch and learning Plone framework, and to actually really understand what was really going on in Plone and how to actually work in the framework. So how did it all come together? It actually virtually hit me one day. I was just really sitting there at my desk and I was like, had an epiphany, like, I get it. It was kind of amazing, actually. And really what made it all come together, in my opinion, was really just understanding the object hierarchy in the context object and what you can all do with that context object. The way I view the context object is kind of like it's the king. You can pretty much go anywhere and do anything you want with that. It really helped you work in the framework. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the object hierarchy and how I kind of got that concept built in, which helped me get past that learning curve of trying to understand how to work in the framework. This is more for the developer or integrators that are going to find this a little bit more useful than probably the themers. But the themers, I have some stuff later on which will benefit. So this is kind of an overview of the object hierarchy, a very simplistic way I kind of view it. I view it as multiple layers, kind of containers, and everything is contained in all these containers working down. In a similar way, it's like a tree. The outermost layer is your Zope layer, which you can have like as web server, you have local hosts, and inside there you have your Plone site. In your Plone site, you have access to all these different tools, such as the portal catalog, portal membership, portal properties, portal URL, portal actions. There's lots and lots of different tools that you can access. Then if you look down as the URL goes down and traverses down, you have my folder, which is another container, which contains a leaf, which is my page. It's your final thing. So all this kind of forms all the different layers that work down in the Plone, and you can kind of see how each I guess, object kind of contains a different object all the way down to the leaf. So, how does this really work with context? A user comes in and says, I want to see my page. Asks for the request, comes in, builds up your context object. Now your context object is hooked into the last traversable object, the last object in the traverse chain. So it is my page. Now your context is hooked into your my page here. So you have, through context, the ability to access any attributes, methods of my page. Very, very powerful. What I didn't realize at first is also with the context, you have the ability to use all the tools in the Plone site, such as the catalog, the membership, the properties, the URL, the actions. You can retrieve all those tools and use them, which makes it an extremely powerful tool. To kind of help show how the context works, I'm going to show you this really cool URL dispatching mechanism that Plone does, which it kind of simulates how the context works. So many of you know that you can say context/title, and it will return the title of my page, since it's the last leaf of the page. Well, I don't know if many people know this, but you can actually go to any URL on a Plone site, go to your my page, and say /title, and it will return just the plain text title for you. This is all done through, context, just like this. It's really the context of my page /title is my page /title. It kind of shows a one-to-one kind of correlation here. So you're probably asking, what else can I do? Well, you want to see the description? You can go my page /description, and it'll pop out the description as plain text. Now, these are a lot of attributes of my page. So what happens if I want to call a method of my page, such as the editor body of your page? So we have my page here /getText, which I am calling to get the editor portion of the page, and it comes out as fully structured HTML right here, the body of your page. So this is a very useful way of kind of visualizing how my page is your context, and you're saying /getText. In an HTML thing such as like tab, you can actually say context /getText, and you would be getting this exact same thing. This is really good for like even debugging purposes. If you're doing some quick testing and you want to trigger away and see what is going to come out of this method, you can kind of dump it out here if you need to. You should also be aware that this is all protected, and it's not like any user can hit these things and see private data. It's all security taken care of. You don't have to worry about that. It's all based off your user privileges. Just for the fun sake of like seeing what the context really could do, I decided to hit the Plone Symposium website and see if I could actually call the catalog, one of the tools, using the same, since the context has that capability and how those hooks into it. So I went to the Plone Symposium website, called the portal catalog, looked up search results, and got all the search results with the title of schedule back. This is completely useless to do, I'll just be honest, but I just wanted to show you that you can hit tools just like this without any really programming, like Python stuff. You can see what some of these objects and things are doing. So this is kind of I'm trying to bring in how URL structure in the last object in the URL structure, such as my page here, has the ability to access all the different objects through the URL, just as if it was the context object. Hopefully that kind of makes some sense. Once you kind of understand that, you may have to read in a little bit more about that, but once you really understand that, that's how I felt was a great way to understanding how you can actually save stuff to Plone, how you can get data from Plone, how you can traverse around the website, how you can access all the different tools. This is like the real key to me when I was developing a lot of different views, different objects, different archetypes. Like understanding this really helped me a lot, and I recommend that is a place that you should really look into if you're just starting to kind of working in the development environment. So, what can you all get with the context? This is just a few things, believe it or not. The context object, if you were to just dump it out and see what is all accessible through it, you would be amazed. It's just huge. So you can get the portal catalog, portal types, actions. You can hit the skins directory. You can contact all the object attributes, all the object methods. You can get non-portal methods, and you can contact other views from there too, which I will go into more with the templating views and how we can leverage that with context. Just an overview of what the context really is. It is the reference to the last object in the traversal chain. So how I had it before with my folder, my page was the last object in the traversal chain. That was the context, meaning I can then say context/title, context/description, and I can get all that data back out. And I was showing that through the URL, how they were pretty much kind of almost one-to-one in a way. Context is almost available everywhere you are on the Plone site, and if it isn't, you can get different ways of getting the context. For example, templates, you may have seen it as here. If you ever worked in templates before, a lot of older versions of Plone, they've referred to it as here. It's also as context. In browser view, it's automatically set up for you, so when you extend the browser views and make your own custom ones, you are already getting the context completely set up in there. It will just be self.context, and then you can move around the website as you need and do anything that you need. Portlets and viewlets are browser views, just extended browser views if you look up the object hierarchy of those. And so they all have context. And you have context in Python scripts, I believe if you do request.context, is that right? Or is it context.request? I can't remember exactly. For Python scripts, is it request.context to get the context, or is it context? That's it, yes. And that's how you can get the context from Python scripts. So it's available everywhere. You can really do a lot of stuff with it. Really understanding that, I think the doors open up, and what kind of, like I said, like the context is king, like, 'cause you can do anything you need to do once you have that object. So I'm going to show you some different ways of how you can use the context just within, the template. Most of you will probably already know this, but this is, again, for new developers and integrators. This is just a way that you can use context to figure out what the root of the website is. So you can say the Python script context/portal URL.get portal object.absolute URL. This is not very helpful. I'm just showing you that you can actually use the context to hit all these different tools and retrieve many different pieces of information and pull them back. In reality, you should probably be doing a lot of this logic in your browser view or in your classes, because you don't want to do Python logic within your template. You should keep your templates clean, just HTML, but I'm just kind of giving you guys an example here that you can actually do these complicated calls against context and do a lot of stuff. Down here are some smaller examples, which I will post my slides and you can view them in more detail if you need. But on the very last one, I'm actually grabbing brains from the catalog, which are catalog data, out of the catalog in a template here. So I'm retrieving other data on the website and pulling it back into this template, all available through the context. Also, context can be done with context/absolute URL if you're not using the Python interpreter within the templates. Here's an example of a browser view and using some context. You can do it with acquisitions of self.context.portalcatalog.search results and get your stuff, or get tool by name, give it the context again, and retrieve the portal catalog. That also has a default, which is nice, so if you don't get the catalog back, you can kind of predefine what would come back if there was some problem. And then you also have the iTools interface. Like most things in Plone, there's many ways of doing one thing. And I hope the Plone API is going to kind of make this so there's one way of doing it, which will make it a lot easier. All three of these ways have different security constraints that you have to watch for, different privileges you have to access. So you have to read the documentation and determine which one's really best for your particular use case. I don't want to get into that level of detail in this discussion. So to kind of wrap up the context, it is the retrieval of tools and utilities. You can retrieve tools and utilities. You can call object methods and properties. You can do acquisitions of and traversing to other objects in views. So you can move all over the Plone site with context. And there is much more that you can do if you get the Doc Finder tab. If you're a new developer and you don't have this, I would highly recommend that you add this into your development environment. You can get it at the URL here, which I will post the slides. This tool allows you to see all of the object's data, all the methods that you can kind of get from that object. It's very, very useful. And most of them you can just retrieve straight from the context. Once I really understood this whole object hierarchy, what context could do, the requests, the kind of moving around, all that, the learning curve really seemed to disappear for me. And then I was like, oh, I know that by making an archetype here, I have this method here, I can grab it with the context without any problem. That really seems to be the key point that if you can really wrap your head around those two things, I think a lot of the complexity of this is going to dissolve for you. Make sure I hit everything. Yep. So I'm going to show you a kind of a cool little trick that I've done with TinyMCE now. This is good for little integrators or themers who want to plug in some functionality into their website but don't really have the patience or expertise to really dig into the TinyMCE plugins and adding new buttons to it. This is another way of actually executing and controlling a way of executing JavaScript functions within Plone and within the TinyMCE editor. So I have leveraged TinyMCE settings, their styles, to wrap elements through the editor so the content creators can strap on JavaScript functionality where they see fit. I know that was a mouthful, but I hope this will kind of demonstrate of how this all works. So step one, you want to go to the TinyMCE settings in your site setup. Scroll down to the Styles tab. This is where you would declare different CSS styles that you could strap on and let the editors be able to choose, I want to have a heading, I want to have a bold here. This is where you can add different styles, but we're going to actually add JavaScript triggers into here. So what I've done is I've just dropped in a trigger pop-out on a paragraph element with the class trigger pop-out and the content of the pop-out on a paragraph called with the class pop-out, content pop-out. So once you add these two in there, you hit save, they're added, they'll be in the drop-down of your TinyMCE editor. So now we go to a page that we've created, we add two paragraphs, want to learn more? Cool, huh? This is all in the bubble, which will make sense in a minute. Then once you go to the style drop-down here, you'll notice that we have trigger pop-out and content pop-out. So on the first one, you attach trigger pop-out, want to learn more, and then we add content pop-out to the bottom bubble. Then once you hit save, we end up with this. I have some JavaScript in the background that is handling all the different actions that are being strapped on here. So now once you hover over it, the content that was declared below appears in a pop-out bubble. This has given a simple content editor, someone who doesn't know any JavaScript, the ability to add advanced tooltips with really ease right here. This is a pretty simple example of different things that you can do through that style dropdown in a way of controlling the JavaScript so they don't have to deal with it, that you've controlled it, you know it's secure. They can just choose the classes which strap on the functionality to their elements. So this is a very simple example here. This is just really basic JavaScript that I just kind of popped together for this one right here. I mean, it's just saying on that trigger pop-out, when you hover, this is what happens when you hover over, that's what happens when you hover out. Very, very simple, very easy to control. And then I did the CSS in here too. I normally wouldn't do that, but I didn't want to have two slides for this, so let's put them all together. So what this kind of gives you the ability to leverage is through the web controlled JavaScript functions. I mean, some ideas that I was like throwing around in my head is like we have advanced tooltips which we can do. You can also trigger jQuery effects in UI. You also can control JavaScript feeds and AJAX requests and place them into particular sections of a page. I know a lot of this stuff is kind of becoming obsolete since we have Cover, which can do this, collective.cover, and as well as all the different new tools that are coming out. But if you're running an old website that doesn't have these tools and these capabilities, these are simple ways that you can actually achieve that by using kind of the simple method. Just an example like an RSS one, if you wanted to make a table up and maybe in this corner of the table you wanted to have some like a JSON or an RSS feed that you're pulling in, you want the data to display there, you can literally select in that table cell and say, I'm going to strap on this RSS feed. Your JavaScript will then read and place it right into that table cell, giving you it right on that page, kind of a little bit more flexibility. The user doesn't have to worry about it when they create it. What am I doing with this feed or what do I have to set up? They just have to click, click, and it's there. So it's very easy on their part. Okay, so that was some little trickery that you can kind of do with TinyMCE. I'm not sure if the new TinyMCE editor that's coming out, if the styles dropdown is going away. Do you know that? Okay, not sure. So this is for a little bit older. Okay. Yeah, so this is like for older websites, if you need to kind of leverage this, this is a very simple way of doing it. This is something else that I've done before. These are some tips on how you can, let me go down. Yep, this is some tips that how you can reuse little template snippets all over your website in a very easy way. Most people know, you can use macros, metal and tal. A lot of people use different ways of doing this. Here's just another really simple way of doing this. It's literally just that line right there, which you can insert a snippet of HTML. I'll show you a little bit more detail of how this works. So let's create a small template. You can drop this into your skins directory, or if it's in a product, you can have it in your product directory. Literally, this is just a little snippet of HTML. And you notice that also we can hit the context in here, context/title. It'll be put in here, so the context is passed into this template. So that's just a little bit of snippet, a little bit of HTML that we may want to reuse in like 5 places on our website or something. So we don't want to have to go in there and change all those 5 places on our website when one thing changes. We can just change it here, and it will reflect all over the website. So this is a really simple way of doing this. And then when you want to actually put it in your website, you literally just have to do that one line right here, and you'll have it in your website. Tal insert, you can name whatever that you really want to name there. You can put block if that seems more, what you want to do. I just see insert, and I know that was what I was trying to do. Then I say content, your structure, context/my snippet. Remember, context is very powerful. It has the ability to acquire all these different views. So I am saying I want to get the view of my snippet and place it right there. So literally that snippet that I made before, right here, would be placed right there inside that place, just with that one line of HTML right there. So it's very, very simple to do, very, very reusable. It doesn't take much. So that's a really great way of reusing templates and reusing little snippets of code that can change in one place, and then you don't want to change it everywhere. This is a very good way of kind of just handling that. So, template tools. I have come across the need many times to actually make a little tool that I can use into my templates, maybe looking up a permission or doing some fine-grained logic that I need to determine what appears in a template or doesn't appear. And this is a way you can make your own template tools, which is very, very useful. You may have used some tools before that. I call them tools. I don't know if there's a different word that the Plone community uses, but there's add images, which you can get different images and resize images. There's all these other tools available in Plone, but sometimes you just want to make your own. So this is how you would make your own tool. You just have to make a Python class, which you're going to extend browser view, which is a multi-adapter, which allows you to leverage this really easily. So I call the class myTools. You make a property up in this class. I just said do something. Here's some logic that you can kind of execute, and I want it to return a Boolean value. So that's what this little method would do. Then I added in the ZCML a snippet here saying I just want this available everywhere. You can strap it to any interface that you want if you only want it on a specific piece of content. The name of it is myTools, pointing it to my class, and I just put it to ZOP2 view permission. You may have to choose a different permission level depending on what this tool is doing. So you'll have to be aware of your permissions. So how do you actually use this tool? You can use it like this. Tal condition, again with context, context/myTools is what you named your class. Not the class, I'm sorry, the name of the class that references back to your browser view. And then you call the method that you just created, do something. This will trigger your tool. Very, very useful. I am missing the @ symbol. I know this. You probably want to put your myTools with the convention of @, meaning that it's a view that you've declared so it doesn't collide against any objects that are named with myTool. It's just something, I'm sorry, I forgot to put that in there. And then here's an example of it actually working kind of in a sample practice here. You have your condition, context/myTools/do something. Anything in that method that I declared before, any logic that I wanted to do, will determine if it passed or failed. So this is not just useful in template tools. As you've seen before, you can do it in the template. Well, where else can you actually leverage this tool? Anywhere context is available, you can leverage this tool, your tools. So any tails expression that you have, the best examples that I can think of are in the product overrides for Plone form gen. You can actually call these tools that you've made if you wanted to figure out some snippet of logic that you wanted to do, so you can hit that. And it's also known as here in PFG. I don't know if it's the new version of PFG, if that changed or not, so that's one thing. You also can do it in like your portal tool conditions if you want to have some JavaScript or portal CSS, if you want to kind of set those conditions so it doesn't return it all the time. So instead of having this massive condition field that you have in there, you can kind of condense it down, put it in a tool, and then call it later. So it's very, very easy to read in those portal tools. And this is, I guess, one of my final tips for you today. Most people don't know this exists, and it's kind of surprising. I didn't know it existed until a year ago. You can go to your Plone site, the root of your Plone site, and go to /test_rendering, and it will display all the standard elements of HTML and how they're styled in CSS on your website. This is a very useful thing if you want to see like your H1s, your H2s, how your tables are going to look, if they're all standard to how your theme looks. And I didn't know it existed, and when I talk to people and kind of mention it, not many people know of it, and it's very, very surprising since it's a useful tool. So that's one of my tips. And that's what I have for you today. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy. I'll post my slides to this URL, so if you want to write down that URL. Otherwise, you can search for Plone tips on our Plone projects site at UW-Wash, and you will find my slides. Yes?
On your example of template and then invoking some code, where's the code? Where do you create that code at?
You're talking about my tools class here in the browser?
Yeah,
view?
exactly.
Yes. I put my tools, I have a bunch of products made up already for the library, very specific to our library. I put a lot of my stuff in my product, and then they're installed into my website.
So it's part of the product.
Yes, I use products.
Do subscale to build. Is that?
Yes, and I use Zopscale and Pacer to build those.
What if I just went through the web? What is that? Can I do it that way or?
Through the web, Python scripts will not allow you to import browser view, I believe, so you will not be able to do it through the web. But I believe you can drop it into your browser view class, into your extensions folder, correct? And have it be picked up. But I would, yeah. Nathan said we should make a products, go into the products folder and make a product like in there, and you can pick it up there without having to really go into the creation. And that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to elaborate, that'd be great. I don't use that method.
Build-outs always come with, like, in the build-out directory, there's a /products, and you can add another folder and call it whatever you want. As long as it, as far as Python conventions go, as long as it has like an init.py in it, and then you can add your code inside of there. You can just configure it at ZCML in there, and those products are already automatically kind of pulled in. So
I like.
Easy way to add stuff.
Yeah, I would still recommend making your own product, because then you can version it. You can see where it was before, where it is now. You can go back to the older versions. I prefer doing it that way. I would recommend doing it that way. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.